You're listening to From There to Here, a Star Trek Enterprise podcast. Hello, my name is Josh, and with me is
Justin.
Before we get started with today's episode, I'd just like to say that we do have an email address that you can contact us at. It's podcastnx01@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and if you write into us, we may even read your email during the recording. So please shoot us a line. All right, so this week's episode is Season 1, Episode 13, Dear Doctor. Phlox is asked to save the Valakians from annihilation by disease. However, he discovers something unusual about the Menk, another humanoid race on the planet. On the IMDb, this is rated as an 8.0.
Well, this episode has an original air date of January 23rd, 2002, directed by James A. Cottner. This was his first directing duty for Enterprise. And a little tidbit, UPN requested a modified ending to the episode, as the original version had Phlox and Archer disagreeing over what to do with the Valakians.
Holy cow.
Archer would have wanted to save the race, while Phlox would have wanted evolution to take its course. John Billingsley, who plays Dr. Phlox in Enterprise, didn't agree with the changed version, saying, quote, "The ending that had initially been created I was fairly comfortable with, but the head of the studio suggested some revisions on the ending. What do? I wasn't happy with the revisions, but it's not my show. You have to sort of adjust, even if sometimes it does seem a bit of a contradiction in terms for what your character is supposed to be about." Billingsley later said, "I know people were a little of two minds on that episode. I rather liked it."
Oh, I had no idea. So you're telling me that the episode originally ended with them disagreeing, but the captain still deferred to?
Well, it doesn't say that, so
Okay.
I actually don't know what the ending would have been. I mean, Archer obviously has the last word, so
Right.
if Archer were not to have come around to Phlox's position, then I guess that means he would have given it to them.
Because I can't imagine that there was an ending where they did.
Which in a
Save
way
the-
would have been a very Enterprise thing to do at this point, because they're finding their footing, and we, the audience, would know he was probably making a mistake, or maybe not a mistake, but making a judgment that was beyond his station.
So are you
at the very minimum.
Are you saying that you think the original ending was that they did give the Valakians this cure?
Well, that's what I infer from that quote.
Okay, because that's
a big deal.
That's a big deal. I mean, I can understand them maybe.
So it sounds like UPN came down and said, "No, give us the happy ending." No, I'm sorry.
That would have been a happy.
No.
I mean, which
No,
was happy?
I'm sorry.
I mean, that
I
depends on
beg
your
your pardon.
point of
No.
view. Okay.
I think UPN came down and said, "No, you can't do that because that's humanity playing God, and you can't do that." Because the argument was made so well in the episode that basically that's exactly what you would be doing.
Are you sure in that interpretation? Okay, well, I mean, I didn't read the article you did. So.
Why else would they take away that ending? Because Phlox makes one argument, Archer makes the other, saying, "No, we have the ability to save them. They're asking for help. Of course we're going to do it." The only reason UPN, I think, would pull back from that is because, just like the analogy Phlox makes in the episode, what if some alien had come down to Earth at some point and gave this species a leg up? And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, that argument was very well put. And if they were watching a cut of that episode, if you then have Archer give that medicine to those people, then he's a smart guy. He is knowingly not learning from history and doing something that would very potentially change the development of a world. And without them saying who the head of UPN was and all of that, must have been. You don't even have to be in charge of Star Trek to realize you're now setting your captain up to look kind of bad. So the only way to end that is for one of them to come around. And I think you have to look at the content of the episode, which thankfully someone did, and said, you can't have them do it. You just can't.
Well, I suppose that...
And it's not as dramatic.
The only scene, like the scene as we see it, the scene between, in their mess hall, the scene between Archer and Phlox, I assume that was original. And then this ending scene where they go down to the planet and tell the native doctor, we don't have it.
Well,
Good
I
luck.
would assume it
That
was also the scene.
That was the reshoot.
Well, and also, or it could have just been in script phase.
And Phlox's
in sick
addendum,
bay when
yes,
Archer
yes.
comes to talk to him. Yeah. Oh, well, we should go back though. Let's
oh yeah,
tell
well
the
let's
episode
okay.
first.
So we're talking about the end here, but let's jump into the episode. I'll just say right off the bat, this is the best episode of the series so far. This is hands down the best. Like this is the last two. They're on a roll here. The last two were in the park home runs. This is a grand slam basically. Like this is basically what Star Trek is supposed to be. Like
But
these kind
you
of
stole
questions.
my line. That's
One of us was gonna say
That's
it.
what I was going to say. Some variation of that, which is this is what Star Trek does, and this is Star Trek at its best.
Yeah,
right
exactly.
here. It's taking a moral argument or a moral question, putting it in a sci-fi frame, and making you really care about what the answer is. And because it's removed in this sci-fi frame, you can apply judgment to
And
it.
all of the constituent pieces of the plot
That's a big word.
all kind of dovetail nicely together,
They
and
do.
perfectly. Like
Yeah.
this episode was written perfectly. Not a step out
No, it
of
was
bounds.
very well written.
Very tight, but not a note extra. It was perfect.
Yeah. Nothing felt tacked on
Or unnecessary.
superfluous,
Nothing.
anything.
So we jump in, and we're jumping into, finally we get a doctor episode. I love Phlox, but we haven't had a doctor episode, a doctor-centric episode up to this point. And I had no idea that Dear Doctor was going to be his first one.
Absolutely.
And it opens up in sickbay, and we get him. He's writing a letter, and it's kind of akin to Dear Data, the way that Data was writing to Commander Maddox. So it's Data's narration, but here it's Phlox's narration as he's throughout the episode. As he narrates, he's actually writing letters to his doctor friend.
Right.
I think it's Dr. Lucas or something,
Yeah,
something
I
like
think
that. Which is a nice touch. Really
Oh, it
gives
is.
a personal touch. Phlox, like Data, he's an outsider. And he's giving these outsider points of view to this human culture that he...
Oh, I'm sure the structure of this episode was taken directly from Data's day.
Seems like that, doesn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
Right.
it worked like gangbusters.
Yeah.
It was a great way, although Data's day, I think, used it more as it used it both as a structure device, but also as a means to keep the audience off kilter. Because if it was, the whole episode was told from Data's perspective. So if you were to see it third person omniscient, we, the audience, might have had a clue that T'Pel was really a Romulan and all that stuff. But they chose a device that allowed us, just like with the episode of Lower Decks, to be, and I do mean the episode Lower Decks, not the show Lower Decks, to be unaware of certain details that you might otherwise would have been, to then make the ending a big reveal. So this was just merely a structural device.
Well, it wasn't merely that. No. Well, I mean, we need that outside perspective.
No, I just mean that the notes. It was a structure, a framework to build the story of.
Okay, yes.
Why, that way we can understand what
framing,
he's thinking.
yes.
Yeah, without having to talk to, say, crewman Cutler and verbalize his thoughts.
Well, getting down to the nitty gritty, that opening scene, I think kind of introduced us to the kind of character that Phlox is, really without any dialogue. We haven't really got to see him in his environment really in detail. And the opening scene is him going around and feeding his pets are they his pets, his organisms, on his test organism? I don't know.
No, that he uses them during his
research?
medical care.
Okay, so
He'll,
for that reason.
like he's used as osmotic eel. It's good at healing wounds and things like that.
So
and he will on occasion feed one to the other.
It's part of his like toolkit.
Yeah.
In a way. Okay,
Yeah.
so he's going around feeding them, and little joke, he eats one of the caterpillars he's feeding. One of them.
You think he's about to give a
about to eat
second
it.
one, and he
I'd forgotten about that. That was
he
funny.
downs it.
But we go from there to movie night, which we haven't seen yet. We've heard it. We've had
We
characters
wanted
talk
to watch
about
a
it.
movie
tonight.
No
We go to
one
movie
gets
night
that.
in the mess hall, and
Finally, although I didn't know the movie,
I don't
it was
know what
at
movie
least
they're
with
watching.
recognizable actors.
the actors, we should have looked that up. The actors,
It was Ingrid Bergman and Gary Cooper.
okay, so at least you knew who the
And
actors
you
were.
know it had to be a Paramount movie in
Because-
color.
because they were under Paramount contract.
Well, yeah, there's no way
Oh,
Paramount
because
would
Paramount,
show
yeah,
a movie.
you're
that-
right.
Yeah.
Paramount had the rights, of course.
Of course.
But they're watching movie night. Phlox is there with Crewman Cutler, and we haven't seen Crewman Cutler since Strange New World.
I was wondering if you were going to remember. I did read that. Yes, and
is this her last one or last
no?
appearance?
She appears in one more, according to what I read.
Okay.
I can't speak. Read on Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. 3 episodes, but she really stuck out. She really makes
Mm-hmm.
it feel like she's in more. Like she
is a standout. I think that's why.
You
Particularly in this
you know
episode.
her character right away. She just bam nailed it.
Yeah. Some people, I think, just have that quality.
Just have it. Yeah.
Well, they're watching whatever movie it is. They're watching it together. And funny bit, what's his name is there? Who else is watching it?
Trip.
Trip is watching it and he's crying.
He's crying.
And the doctor finds that more fascinating
And
than
Trip
the movie.
lies.
Yeah, but he's like, oh, I got dust in my eyes or something.
Yeah.
But Phlox is like fascinated watching everyone react to the movie, and we're getting that narration. And he's kind of saying like, oh yeah, we used to have movies when, on my planet a few hundred years ago, but they lost their appeal. And isn't it funny how these humans can have such compassion for people that don't even exist? It's like, and there it's meta, because we're people watching people watch something. It's like, it's very strange.
You have to wonder though, if we humans ever are to make contact with an alien race that is advanced, that has a culture and all of that. Maybe it will be like that episode of Voyager where they don't know what music is,
Okay.
Or I want to say they ran into another. I'm not saying it was Voyager. Some Star Trek series I think ran into another world that didn't know what movies were. They didn't make things like that.
Okay.
They had art, but they didn't have moving pictures. That was something we made. So can you imagine how would an alien species perceive our interest in something that we ourselves know is fake, but yet we get so invested in it?
Well, look at the aliens in Galaxy Quest. They didn't know those things were fake.
Exactly.
They thought it was real.
They have no idea what that
Historical
is. They don't know
documents.
what a TV show is. Yes. They're like,
Yeah.
why would you make something like
They
that
thought
up?
Gilligan's Island was real.
They don't know what lies are.
No.
There could be an alien species that does not know what subterfuge
No, they know
is.
what lies are, but they
Well, that's true, but they don't do it.
they think everything is truthful. They were
Yes.
exposed to lies through Saris.
Yes,
in
true.
in that movie.
Yes, true. They did say that.
So,
But just could you imagine? And it seems kind of quaint and goofy, like a cliche, to see the alien character going, "Wow, look at all these human reactions and all that." But really, it would be completely crazy. It would not make any sense, and it would be a sociological experiment. He would be fascinated, just like if we were to go to an alien culture and watch them partake in whatever they do for entertainment, would be totally illogical to us. It wouldn't make any sense. So I just think that's fascinating. Yes, it's cliche, especially in Star Trek, but it is an interesting thought.
well, like you said, this is just a moral story wrapped in a sci-fi frame, and which is what Star Trek does best. And we're not supposed to see it as alien cultures, but Earth cultures.
Right.
What happens when those kind of
do you think Klingons have TV shows?
No, that would be too passive for them. They have to get involved.
Exactly. They don't have TV shows like Leave It to Skrulnik or whatever. They don't have that.
Leave it to Faklar.
Leave it to Flecklar. No. They don't have TV shows like Highway to Stovall. They don't have those. Those don't exist.
No.
Those don't exist. So
no.
it would be completely I can't even imagine how another culture would wrap their mind around that sort of thing.
No, I don't know.
Highway to Stovall.
No, that's a good title. They should
make that show.
They should make that episode
That should be like a YouTube fan show.
Yeah.
Who do they have to kill to get to Stovall?
Every show is a new mission where they someone's trying to get into Stovall. It's an anthology series like Black Mirror.
And it would be all about this walking pilgrim Klingon that, just like the A-Team, he goes from town to town and he helps to kill someone new every week.
Oh, okay.
He
walks the earth like Kang in Kung Fu.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just, who do you need to kill today? I will help you ascend.
We're going to go on the Great Tribble Hunt. Well, okay, so we were talking about
anyway.
Dear Doctor. So not long after that, we get, I think that's when the Valakians show up in that ship.
Yeah. Yeah, they find them.
Yeah, they find them floating around in a small ship. They bring them aboard. They diagnose them. They got to unravel their language first, and we find out these Valakians are dying. They mention that millions of them been dying for many, many years. They don't have warp technology, so they've sent ships out to
ask for help.
Look for help.
Yeah.
Like in Interstellar, they just
But
send
they
people
obviously
out blindly.
And according to dialogue, they do not travel at warp 5. They probably travel at warp 1, so that they haven't gone very far.
They don't have warp technology.
Oh, okay, then yeah,
so
they're just shy of warp 1.
They may be an impulse for
Who
all
knows?
we know.
Yeah.
So they stumble upon Enterprise, and well, humans, like Phlox points out, being compassionate, wanting to help other people, immediately go to this planet and see what they can do. They offer their services. You kind of can sense right away that this is not going to end well, at least not in the way that they would hope,
Well, I think you're led to think that.
Mm-hmm.
You're led to think, well, this is going to be that episode where Phlox goes down and just before they have to break orbit, he figures out the serum and is able to save the planet. But then we meet the Menk.
Right.
The Menk are
throw the wrench into it.
Yep, there's the wrench. And as soon as you meet the Menk, that's when you know.
Teek teek.
There's going to be a problem. The Menk are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the kind of problem you think it is. You think maybe, this is what, as you're watching, like, okay, this is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking that Valakians?
Valakians.
You're thinking, okay, the doctor's working with the Valakians. He meets one of the Menk and realizes there's a dual species, bipedal.
Well, even he found that peculiar.
Which is peculiar, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He finds a dual bipedal humanoid species have both grown and evolved and coexisted on the same planet, which is
for thousands of years.
Incredibly rare. Mm-hmm. And they seem to be living harmoniously.
Well, I really like that the native doctor's response.
Yeah.
Where he says, well, he looks to Archer and to Paul. He says, "What, you two aren't from the same planet?"
Yeah,
she's like,
to him, he thinks more than one similar species could grow on the same planet.
To him, that's normal.
Yeah,
yeah.
And so that's the point where he said, the doctor, of course, says, "Oh, well, surely you've scanned them for, because they're immune to it, the Menk."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Well, yeah, of course, it's the first thing we did, but it's not compatible, yada yada yada." Anyway, but the doctor gets the idea, maybe there's a cure in here. So he's really dedicated to looking at the Menk as that possible
you can see
cure
that
option.
On the doctor's face, because, John Billingsley, who plays Phlox, he's a good actor. He knows how to use his face.
Yeah.
He's very expressive under that makeup. You can see right away he's not... He's feeling that apprehension about where this is going.
Sure, but... Mm-hmm. And he is... I think on your first viewing of the episode, this is the part where you say to yourself, okay, Phlox is going to find that there's some genetic thing about the Menk that the Valakians have genetically engineered them to be slaves or something, so you don't feel bad for the Valakians or something like that. Yeah. That's, to me, what the red herring.
That's where you sensed it going?
Only in the sense that that's where this kind of thing would normally go. But that... proves not at all to be the case.
I thought it would be something more along the lines of, well, the Menk, they don't carry this disease, right, but they will eventually crossbreed and cure them. They'll cure each other, something like that.
Honestly, no. I thought if this, of course I knew how it ended, but I thought if this was the first time I was watching, and I couldn't remember, what I thought the first time, but it seems to be a cliche, a convention, whatever, what have you, especially in Trek, that within 2 scenes, that's when you would find that the dominant species is intentionally keeping the lower species down. Right. But that's not remotely the case of what happens.
It's a moral argument that comes up.
Well, of course.
Moral, ethical, with, the doctor doesn't see a problem with the way this species has coexisted. Humans do. They find that the Menk are being exploited. But before we get into that part, the Menk are the kind of second thread woven into this story.
But I think that stuff is pointed out, what you just said. I think that stuff is floated out there because we, the audience, and I think the writers knew this, are trained to think that if they put those nuggets out there, they're being exploited. Don't you see?
Yeah.
Then we would find out they are being exploited for real, as in genetically exploited,
Yes,
intentionally
yes.
exploited.
Oh, no. I see your point. It definitely could have gone that way, and
Yeah.
I see what you mean by us expecting it to.
Right.
But I'm glad it's not.
Oh,
No,
definitely.
because the episode would not be nearly as good.
Oh, it wouldn't be. No, not at
But
all.
the Menk are being woven into the story at the same time. The Crewman Cutler storyline is being woven in, which is also important. It's relevant to the theme of the plot. It's not just this flirtation going on.
No.
It's relevant. It's two species intermingling with each other.
And he turns it on her.
He does, but before that happens, we clearly see that she's got an attraction to him. And there's a moment in the hallway. I think it's when they come out of movie night.
Yeah, I think
where she's acting.
She keeps finding reasons to keep
She's
him
acting
there and
very
talk to
flirty
him.
and kind of talking cute, and she's wanting to spend time with him. Hey, what are you doing next week? You want to hang out later? That kind of thing.
You want to go hang out at the docking pylon?
The doctor is Phlox's. He can kind of suspect what's going on. He's an alien, so he's not sure. But
he's not sure. He suspects, but he's not
right.
sure.
He's not sure, but
because, and I quote, the pheromones of your species are not as
strong as
a
Denobulan woman.
Yeah.
But he allows her to kiss him on the cheek, even though they don't like to be touched. He allowed that, so it's very obvious she's jonesing for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found the conversation he had after that with
T'Pol.
No, not T'Pol. That's later.
Oh, with Hoshi.
With Hoshi to be a really good scene.
Yeah, it was.
I like the two of them together as a mentor kind of and learner. Those two characters really play off each other well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I would have probably glossed over it and forgotten about it, but I do like them together.
Well, there was just so much going on in this episode that was good.
Is.
I was taking so many mental notes. I'm like, I got to remember this.
No,
I got to remember that.
There really are.
Yeah.
The framework of him talking to his doctor friend, you could have not had that in there and still told the story. It wouldn't have been necessarily as effective. He would have had to verbalize his thoughts to someone else.
Right. That narration lets us into his mind in a way that, even though narration can be looked at as...
It can give away too much.
Well, it can be looked at as a crutch in a lot of cases. But this was perfectly used.
That was a flavor of the episode that it didn't have to have, but it did. And his conversation with Hoshi there was great because usually, and this isn't a dig, usually with Star Trek, when you have an A plot and a B plot, usually connecting them is a little more obvious and whatnot. But this was more subtle. Like, I was actually, because I had forgotten some of the finer details. I had forgotten about the scene when Phlox turns on Cutler, not turns on her, but says, "What about you and me? What do you think about my species? I have 2 wives," and he's just making a point.
Yeah,
and the whole episode had been building to that, and I didn't even see it coming. And
it was very clever in the way it kind of
and his conversation with Hoshi feeds into all of it, but just feels like they were just sitting
a normal
down
conversation.
Eating. Yeah.
That was the brilliance of the writing. It starts
absolutely.
off, she's speaking in Denobulan.
Yeah.
So it's playing off that regular dynamic. He's the mentor, she's the learner. And then it flips.
Yeah.
She starts asking him, "Hey, I've been noticing you with Crewman Cutler recently. Are you two like, but he does that in Denobulan. You have to ask me in Denobulan." Reminded me of, Last Crusade in Greek.
You know what I like about the two of them though, is that because Hoshi is the baby, of the crew.
Yeah.
When she interacts with Trip or Malcolm and all of that, it's always Starfleet, so that's always her superior officer. Phlox is removed from Starfleet, so she can just kind of be herself with Phlox.
She relaxes.
So that mentor-y type of thing you mentioned, that there's a dynamic that exists between the two of them that sometimes can't between other characters on the ship because of what they are and who they are. And so, I'm glad that the writers exploited that and used it. And I'll bring this around now since you brought up that scene. The T'Pol scene in sickbay.
Right, because he also solicits advice
from T'Pol.
Who, of course, you would suspect would have no interest in this whatsoever.
Well, again, she could have just come in for a headache, but she came in for a toothache.
Yeah.
How great was that? And not only did she have a toothache, he actually had to perform dental surgery on her and knock out a cavity, which for them using their science took like 2 minutes.
Right.
But
it could have been a cheap joke, where he's doing that cliche where the dentist is talking to you when he's got his hand in your mouth.
How great was that they found a way to work in that cliche, and you're thinking, oh, that's so cute. They're doing dentistry, and then he starts asking her a question. You're like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. And seeing a Vulcan go, and they only did it once.
Yeah,
and then he took his. That was it. It was a quick joke. It was fun. It felt natural, and I forget what episode I said this about, but I'm glad that while T'Pol offered her opinions on the how to behave with an alien race and what you can and can't do, I'm glad that they didn't make it an Earth Vulcan thing. She gave her opinion. Yeah. They said okay, and
well, she made a very good point.
They didn't blow her off or anything. They didn't, but they just didn't have an argument about it.
No,
I'm glad.
No, but she did make a good point. Saying that humans or any other kind of immature species may find you just fascinating because you're new.
Right.
And when that wears off, what happens then?
Yeah. And no, but I'm not talking about her scene with Phlox. I'm talking about when she talked to Archer.
Oh, I see.
About the dilemma.
Okay.
And this could have been one of those, okay, let's make T'Pol kind of the bad guy thing, where Trip would, slam his hand down and say something. I'm glad it never happened.
Don't rock around our studio. What are you doing?
I'm glad that didn't happen. That the show, the crew has evolved to the point where she can give an opinion like that's contrary or educational, and it can be different. And that led to another scene that I really dug. Short, but I dug it, and that's with Archer and T'Pol. When she's saying all these things, and he's firmly sticking to his belief, not having a fight, just saying, no, we're going to save him. But then he stops and he pauses and he goes, for the first time, and he goes, I hate to say this, but I'm starting to see what the Vulcans must have been thinking and feeling when they came to Earth. In other words, the humans, Enterprise, are the very advanced species that could very easily add a lot of help to this situation, but they are put into a position. As far as Archer knows at this point, Archer has two things he's being asked. He's being asked for a cure, and he's being asked for warp technology, or simply to stay and help. Well, yeah, right. And and he knows that giving warp technology is not a small deal, so he's
plus they're not advanced enough to understand
it. And he says that he's like, we could give them the schematics, but they don't know how to work with antimatter and so on and so forth. And that's when he says, now I know what you guys probably were thinking. And it's killing him to say it, right? To say maybe they were doing the right things up to for the wrong reasons. Right. They were kind of jerks, but
he's like, well, he understood their point.
Yes, because
he had a perspective he never had before.
No, exactly. Right. And I thought that was
Well, it was brilliantly done. And
it doesn't beat you over the head.
No, because the response from T'Pol is no response. It's just a look.
Yeah.
She understands that he understands, and nothing has to be said.
And well, she even makes the comment, and he goes, we could always stay. And she said, well,
the Vulcans did.
We came 100 years ago, and we're still there. And he's like, okay.
It's like, are you ready for this kind of commitment?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think you are.
Maybe not. Yeah, no.
He was not maybe you won't willing. Judge the Vulcans so harshly now.
Yeah, I thought, man, so, like you said a few minutes ago, there's just so much crammed into this episode. It is so well written, and I wouldn't. Some parts were subtle. Some parts, like Archer saying that, was outright. He said it. There was no in between the lines, right. But it wasn't dwelled on the way that revelation would be a whole scene unto itself. And there was a lot going on in that scene.
There was one moment.
Oh, do tell.
I'll wait till we get there. It's at the very end of the episode, but
okay.
So since all these story points are converging, we mentioned the Menk. The Menk live separately from the Valakians,
right.
Basically in fertile lands. Nothing grows there, but the Valakians give them everything. But everyone seems content, when the crewmen of Enterprise find this out, they're not happy about it. Phlox mentions this in his narration, but eventually, Phlox goes down to visit them. He goes with Hoshi, he goes with crewman Cutler. They're collecting blood samples from the Menk. But Phlox, along with Hoshi and Cutler, they see that the Menk are actually pretty intelligent.
Yeah, they're finding out pretty quickly.
They learn quickly,
how
like
intelligent they are.
the main Menk actor, we see him start to arrange blood samples in like classification and by family line or something like that. And he did it without even being told. And they're like, oh, wow, these Menk are actually quite much more advanced than they would seem.
Right.
Interesting. And it's in that point where we get the conversation with Cutler and Phlox. Phlox, because the stories are kind of weaving together.
Yeah, now they're all starting to
converge.
Yeah.
She's talking about the fact that this is unfair. Like the Menk they're being exploited. This is not fair.
Right.
And he says, well, it's not our place to judge. He's like, well, he said, are you married? She says, oh, I would have told you. He says, well, I am. I have 3 wives. She's like, huh?
She goes, oh, you mean like you're on your third
He's
divorce?
like, nope,
He goes, nope,
3. And those
currently.
3 each have 2 husbands. He's trying to make a point. He's like, we come from different places. We have different values.
He's expecting
and different
a certain
ways of
reaction
seeing things
from her.
And that's exactly what he gets.
He does and he doesn't.
She's surprised by it.
She is. I wish they had slightly doubled down on that and let her be a little not offend. I don't know what the word is. I wish she had shown more dislike for that, because he goes, so, what's next? She's like, oh, well, we'll see,
Right.
And I wish in that, because, if she is interested in him.
Oh, she makes that clear.
Yes. I think finding that out would have been a kind of a punch in the gut. What
do you mean finding that out?
Okay. How would you feel if you're making moves on this girl?
Oh, punching a gut to her?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she tells you that. She'd be like, oh. And you go, and all they had to do was slightly tweak the scene to have him go, don't tell me how you feel about it, but I know you feel something about it. And in other words, I don't like that they made her appear totally okay with it, because that is very different. Let us revel in that a little bit.
No, I thought the scene played out perfectly. I got to disagree with you there. I thought her reactions were natural.
It was a little too perfect. Who would not have a reaction to that?
Well, she did.
Yeah, but not. It wasn't much of
her
one.
words were few, but I think they were selected just right.
I'm not knocking the scene or anything. I'm just wishing that they had given her a little more of a reaction, which is what he was trying to get from her in the first place. And I don't feel her reaction was what he really wanted. Yeah, he expected more of a, oh, really? At least if that was her first reaction. And then if she then backed up and went, well, I guess you are a different culture. But she didn't get that initial look on her face like, oh. Not unlike Trip does. See, a couple seasons later when Phlox's wife shows up and she's putting the move on Trip.
Oh,
and
right.
Trip's like,
yes.
Whoa, hey, this is not right.
Okay.
And he's getting like really hot under the collar.
I don't think that's an apt comparison.
But no, I think it is though, because Phlox goes, has she tried this with you yet? And he goes,
right.
Phlox, what are you talking about? That's your wife. And he's like starting to sweat and all that. Like his reaction was totally realistic. Yes, he's attracted to her, and had Phlox had that not been his wife, he would have totally hooked up with her. But he was totally put off by the whole thing, even though he had both of their blessings. Phlox said, hey, go have fun. Have her try this with you. You'll enjoy it. And he's like, this is too weird. His reaction is exactly what most people's would have been. And I just would have liked to have seen, even if it only played on her face, a little bit of that. Oh, shit, really?
I would have been okay with that, but not too much.
Just even if it's just on the face and she plays the rest with words, but they didn't give us any of that. She seemed totally okay.
Well, I wasn't.
Not that it took me out of it.
Look, I didn't feel that from the scene. I thought it worked just as it did, just fine. But if you added that additional look, I wouldn't think it'd be out of place.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way. So to continue the story.
Sorry.
By this point, Phlox is unsure if he's going to find a cure, but eventually he does. He does find this cure. At first he offers the Valakians
pain meds,
basically to ease their symptoms.
Yeah, he can do that.
And Archer is continuing to pressure him to find a cure, and Phlox
every time he sees him, find a cure yet? You're like, don't you think if he did,
Phlox, eventually he does.
Yeah,
he does find a cure.
Well,
And
let's talk about that scene, how that unravels, because he does not come right out and say
no. Well, the moment it happens,
yeah,
it's without dialogue, where he's sitting in sickbay and he's looking in his microscope. He leans back and you realize he has it, and it goes to black. He doesn't say anything,
but you don't know.
Well, you don't know what he's found, but when we come back and when he starts talking to Archer, we kind of figured out what he did find. That's a really good scene. I mean, the scene we were already there, but the scene with Archer and Phlox. Phlox mentions the Menk. He's trying to explain to Archer the Menk will eventually overtake this society. The Valakians will go extinct.
If the Valakians,
he's like, if they continue as they are, they'll eventually go extinct in a few centuries, and the Menk will thrive on this planet. Mm-hmm. That's nature. That's how it's going to work. I don't think we should interfere with that.
Right. Archer's not even listening.
Archer doesn't like that.
He goes, so you're working on the cure, right?
These people asked for our help. We have to help them. He tells the doctor, it's your moral responsibility. Yeah. He's trying to shame the doctor to find this cure.
Like, why are you even thinking like this?
Yeah.
Just solve the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the doctor isn't in Starfleet. There's no Hippocratic oath for him. I mean, I assume he has something like that.
They do mention at some point, doctors do no harm.
But he's not bound by the morality that Archer is talking about.
No, he's not.
And his retort is, yes, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a scientist, and I see what's happening here.
Yeah.
And eventually he...
and it's important to note, like, throughout this conversation, Archer, like, 2 or 3 times... So you're working on a cure, right? Though, right? Because he's kind of just blowing off everything.
He's avoiding the question.
And the doctor's dancing around the
yes,
answers. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And eventually Archer realizes he's not directly answering him, and he goes, "Doctor,
did you
find a cure yet?" And there's this pause, and he goes, "I already did." Or he says, "Are you still working out something?"
No, he said, "Did you?" And he said, "I already have."
Yeah.
So he's been sitting on it for a little bit.
Little bit.
He could have, in any movie or show where there's a disease, you call up, right, I found the cure. Yeah. He didn't do that.
No.
So obviously,
because he knows the all the issues connected with
it.
And he points out in his voiceover email, that whatever it's called, voicemail, that he admits to outright saying, until the moment happened, I don't know if I was going to tell him at all. He was contemplating not even telling Archer that he had a cure, and
because he admits later on he didn't have that faith yet that Archer was going to make the right decision.
What he thought was the right choice.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't sure, but then he realized, hey, I underestimated him.
Right.
Because we leave that scene and we're not quite sure what decision Archer is going to make.
Yeah, because Archer at that point is still arguing on the side of righteousness.
Right. But it looks like that Phlox made his point. He made a good argument. And it's when we cut down to the planet, we realize what the decision is. And Archer, with a very heavy face, heavy heart, this will help. He gives the native doctor.
Well, you missed the sickbay scene.
Oh, I thought that was afterward.
No, that comes before.
Okay.
Because that's the morning of, where he shows up and says, I'm supposed to go down there. And you think, well, he's going to either ask for the cure or not from Phlox. Mm-hmm. And he said, I hope you've had time to think about it. I'm sorry if I'm pressuring you. And he goes, Doctor, I was up all night. I did think about it. Mm-hmm. And then he does the whole Star Trek thing.
Okay. That's the line I was talking about.
Oh, okay.
This is the line that was the one wrong thing about this episode.
Where he says, someday we'll make some sort of
directive. Yeah. I was like, okay.
He used a couple different words and then he landed on directive.
No, he used a word that was close to directive.
We'll make a rule,
the first time,
a guideline.
And then the next sentence was, well, until we come up with that, I don't know, directive. I was like, okay.
I assume you'll have the same problem
way too
episodes
close.
Later when they go, we need something better than battle stations. There needs to be what like read alert?
Like there was, Bakula did a good enough job making it sound like he was just making it up, like, oh, directive, whatever.
Yeah.
But they were
You're
doing
all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
Like it would have been just fine if he said, well, eventually Starfleet, we're going to come up with some kind of rule to go by for when we meet species. That would have been fine.
Right.
I don't need you to say the word directive. Like that's just dangling the string in front of us.
I know. I didn't feel like it was too much,
And,
but
in an otherwise perfect episode, that was the one misstep, and it was a very tiny one.
okay.
So
okay.
I can forgive it.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just don't find it as egregious as you do.
It was just a little painful
I
because the
know.
episode was so perfect up to that
That
point.
does take you out, make you go, "Oh yeah, this is a TV show."
Well, no,
for
it
a
was like,
second.
oh, it's member berries reference.
Right.
It's reference time.
Yeah, but not in the way that I didn't take it the way you obviously are.
Eh.
I knew it was coming, of course. So
I knew it was too, but I got so wrapped up in the episode, I'd forgotten about that line until we were right there, and I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna say that. Oh wow.
As he was saying it, because he says like say 2 different variations before he lands on directive, and I thought, oh, maybe I knew there was an episode where he did it, and I thought maybe it's not this one, and then
it is.
there it is. Okay,
Yep.
The directive.
So it's after that he goes down to the planet.
So yeah, he tells the doctor, "You're right. We're
Yeah.
not going to give it to him." So yes, cut 2 down there. He says, "Look, I'm sorry, guys. We can give you these painkillers," and
he can't even give him warp drive.
he says yes, because they ask him directly, what about warp technology, so we can ask for more help.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'm sorry," and it
really pains him to do.
killing him to do it. But he
Yeah.
said, "I'm just so sorry. We cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you the best." And I'm thank God they didn't have these people be arrogant or disrespectful back and go, "What's wrong with you people?" No, they just
Right.
said, Thank
you for your help,
for what you've been willing to do."
Mhm.
And you can tell he wants to say something, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He wants to plead. He wants to do whatever.
Well, he's in the position that humans were with the Vulcans, and so
Exactly.
Archer
But
understands exactly how he
yes.
feels.
And this guy,
So-
thankfully, was not petulant.
Yeah.
He just said thank you, and he kept his dignity.
Yeah.
And that was that. And he does give them instructions on how to replicate the pain medicine, but that's it. That's all.
And
that's all you're doing.
we leave maybe thinking, well, maybe they will find a cure on their
You
own.
never know. I
You
mean,
never know.
They have 2 centuries. They might figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there is still time.
Sure.
You don't know it. It's just a possibility of what might happen.
Yeah.
But they're letting it
They're
happen
letting
naturally.
nature take its course, whatever that. Course
Maybe they'll
may be.
find another species that will help them.
Who knows?
They might find a species.
Oh, they did name drop the Ferengi.
They did. Oh, right.
That was one species they had run into.
Right, and they hadn't heard of them before.
And Art, yeah, they're
Even
who?
T'Pol was like, "Who are the Ferengi?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're coming.
Yeah. But that's where the episode ends, aside from the
little
Phlox,
tag with-
Phlox gets a tag where he's making his last letter. And then he calls Crewman Cutler up, hey, because he's been through a lot. Hey, I need a friend. That was her line to him. I just want to be your friend. And which
Wink.
is wink, wink.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need a friend right now. You want to go talk?
I think they talked,
Oh, no.
and then they Netflix and chilled.
I wish that the Crewman Cutler character would have stuck around.
Oh,
I
she
think-
would have if she hadn't passed away.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only Trek fan that wished she would have stuck around.
Oh, I think they were very clearly setting
Sure.
her up to be a
she
recurring
worked.
character.
She worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had that kind of O'Brien-like quality, like in TNG.
You
She
just
worked.
like her. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the end of the episode.
That's it.
I'll give my rating A+. A+, man. Hands down.
No, I don't.
I'm like that teacher in Christmas Story. A+, plus.
No, this is an A+ episode.
Yeah.
Like we said at the top, it's so well written,
Mm-hmm.
very well acted, and I was really impressed at how subtly all the little things. I mean, you all know they're going to weave together, but the way that they did it was so well done.
Yeah.
And it's just
You don't even see it coming in some
all
cases.
the cosmic tumblers have clicked
Clicked
into place, and it just made this perfect representation of what Star Trek does at its best. That's not to say that every Star Trek episode has to be some thinly veiled thing or whatever. I mean, shoot, Star Trek 2 is Moby Dick.
No, it
in
doesn't.
space.
It doesn't always have to.
It doesn't have to be like that. It's just it uses.
Look at the Royale. I love that episode.
It just told a damn good story.
Yeah.
That happened to be in space.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And it wasn't just a power driving A plot. It had a lot of things. I'm just really amazed at how many things they were able to very perfectly balance and still give us little moments here and there, the T'Pol getting her dentistry done, little things
the
like
movie
that.
night with Trip crying.
With Trip crying, with the doctor eating the worm at the beginning.
Right.
It's loaded with stuff.
Yeah.
That are Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek.
Yeah.
Just a damn fine episode. The kind of episode that you would, if you were to try to indoctrinate someone into.
You would show them this one.
This would be on the short list.
Like a gateway.
Yeah. If you don't like this, you're probably not going to like any Star Trek.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, there's more action-packed episodes, but as far as really well-written stuff, I mean, this is like Drumhead. This is really good Trek. And it all brings it to a moral dilemma of sorts, and damn, it did it really well. So, yeah, right there, if I didn't already say it, A+ for sure.
Yeah, other than that one line, there's nothing else I would have changed. I don't have anything else to say. I think I've showered this episode with enough affection already.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
All right. Well, they've set the bar incredibly high. Don't look up the next one.
Well, I was going to.
Okay. Well, I don't want to know. Let it be a surprise.
We usually tell our listeners what the next one is.
All right.
You don't want to?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, now you're going to have to give me a second because it's frozen.
Okay. Well, as I said, they're going to have to do a lot of hard work in the next one because this one they set the bar really high. So
really nice. Well, the next one is Sleeping Dogs. That's where we run into the Klingons.
Okay. All right. Well,
and I got to tell you, I don't remember much about it.
I don't
other
remember
than
much
there's
either.
A woman, like a captain woman. That's all I remember.
So
not that there's anything wrong with that.
I don't. My initial reaction to hearing that title was, I think that was a good one, but we'll see.
It's been a long time.
I don't think it's gonna match up to this one.
Probably not.
No, I mean, like I said, we just had an A+ on our hands, so the odds of them having another A+, I don't know. Two A+.
Shuttlepod 1 is coming.
We both give it an A+. So think about that.
2 thumbs up.
Yes. 2 enthusiastic thumbs up.
I think we should go now.
All right, I'll see you in the next one.
Bye.